Hi, I'm Rod Argent.
I'm Colin Blunstone, and we're from the Zombies.
The guy that absolutely blew my mind and turned my head around and turned me onto rock and roll was Elvis, when I heard him sing Hound Dog in 1956, because I only liked classical music up to that time. And then suddenly Elvis, this record is that I've chosen, there were many I could have chosen actually, because I think for the first 3 years of his life, his voice was transcendent. It still gives me shivers actually when I hear those first 3 years. He thought he sounded like a chicken later on. He said, I sound like a chicken on those early records. But man, it was this really wonderful, high, cutting voice that was totally natural. He never oversang, but it had all the energy and soul in the world. At that time, it was so revolutionary.
My baby even left me, never said a word.
Well, I chose the Jacqueline du Pré album. I'm not familiar with this. She's playing Brahms. She was a magnetic personality, a wonderful performer. It's Jacqueline du Pré and Daniel Barenboim playing Brahms.
Did you know that Jacqueline du Pré was married to Barenboim?
I did indeed, yes. Of course, it was, a very strange relationship at times because she became very ill, very young. And it is a wonderful and a tragic story.
One of my other heroes from an earlier age was Duke Ellington. This album with Duke Ellington and John Coltrane playing together is fabulous. It includes a wonderful version of it in a sentimental mood, if my memory serves me correctly, because it hasn't got the titles on the front here. You know, two real masters, and John Coltrane has the hugest respect for Ellington, and I seem to remember that Ellington, plays with Coltrane's style in mind, which is very interesting because when Duke used to form his orchestras, he always wrote for specific people, right from the early days, right from when he was in the Washingtonians, and they were a group of school friends almost together in the way that we started. Fantastic stuff. So that's Duke Ellington. This was the first time I ever heard the Miles Davis Band of around 1958. But anyway, it's the one with Cannonball Adderley, John Coltrane, Paul Chambers and Philly Joe Jones. This knocked my socks off as well. I could only afford, I didn't have the album, I bought an EP. In fact, the first album I ever bought, very soon after that, which I had to save up for weeks, was the Miles Ahead, the thing that Miles did with Gil Evans, the big band, which is, again, it's a fabulous album, very different to the small band, but still absolutely wonderful. So, that was pretty seminal in my life as well.
Okay, I'm going to go on to this Sting album. In particular, there's a track on here called Fragile, which is my favourite all-time song. It seems to really, sort of explain life to me, and it's a beautiful song, and I'd recommend anyone to have a listen to that.
On along the rain, we'll see how fragile we are, how fragile we are.
And also, there's a great live version by Stevie Wonder. It was a birthday celebration for Sting, and he brought on some wonderful artists in this live concert. And Stevie Wonder came on and sang this song, Fragile.
How fragile we are.
I've got very fond memories of Stevie Wonder's records. This is Songs in the Key of Life. I was on Rocket Records for a time in the mid-70s, and Elton suggested I come to Los Angeles and record an album. And I used to listen to this CD, and there's a particular track called Sir Duke on this, which has an instrumental break in the middle. And while I was driving, I hastened to out on the wrong side of the road, I would be trying to sing this break, I know people that can sing it perfectly, but I've never got from da-da-dum, 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 whatever. I've never got to the end of it. And I just thought, I mean, Stevie Wonder is just a master. He is one of my all-time favourite vocalists and writers. And I thought that this would bring back a lot of memories.
Music knows it is and always will be one of the things that life just won't quit.
I found an album which I haven't got, and again it's on vinyl, which is Ray Charles at Newport. He does The Right Time, which is what he did on Ray Charles in person, with Margie Hendricks singing. Always a little bit sharp when she sang, but nevertheless sounded great anyway.
Well, sing your song, Margie.
Whatever he did, he had so much soul in his playing, and his piano playing. Like, some of these great soul singers were wonderful instrumentalists as well. People never talk about Aretha's piano playing, but it's brilliant, and it's so soulful.
When we first came to the States, Christmas 1964.
8 o'clock in the morning.
8 o'clock in the morning on Christmas Day, we played at Murray the K's show at the Brooklyn Fox, and Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells were on the show, and in fact they were absolutely breathtakingly wonderful, and we had to follow them. So it was kind of good news, bad news. They were fantastic. And then these little 18-year-old boys from London had to come on and follow her, and she was just sensational. There was a great camaraderie backstage at the Brooklyn Fox because we were doing 5 and 6 shows a day, so you got to know people pretty well. So the essential Patti LaBelle.
She was pretty much a practical joker as well. Do you remember that time when she pretended to have a fit
Yes.
and was foaming at the mouth on the floor?
Yeah.
And
we all fell for it.
We all fell for it, and we were racing out trying to get her medical attention.
Yeah.
And she got up and started laughing. She was just swine. I'm very hot on music that gives me tingles up the back of my spine, actually. You know, whether it's Elvis, whether it's Aretha, or whether it was on the bus on the Dick Clark tour in 1965 when we used to travel overnight. About 3 o'clock in the morning, someone would just sing a note, and then they'd build up a chord, and then they'd sing some really, really old spirituals from their childhood, and that used to make the hairs stand up in the back of my neck. Another thing was on this Michael Tippett, Child of Our Time. Wonderful piece of music. Michael Tippett used spirituals, and he's one of those rare classical composers that didn't make the orchestration and arranging of spirituals sung by classical people sound embarrassing. It's absolutely wonderful. The first thing I ever heard of Stravinsky's really was Petrushka and the Rite of Spring and the Firebird, and I know that they're the most popular things, but his mastery of orchestration was just unbelievable, and it came from nowhere because I've heard 1 or 2 things he did before that were very ho-hum, and then suddenly this wonderful talent. And then of course the Rite of Spring, everyone knows, was hugely revolutionary. It started riots in Paris when it was first performed.
I'm not very good at keeping up on current bands, but my daughter is very into music, and this is one of the bands she wants me to check out, London Grammar.
Oh, they're cool.
Yeah, they're really
cool.
I can only go by what I've been told, and as I say, I have to put in a full report when I get home, so I'll be listening to that very closely. This last one is just it's a memento realio. Rod and I have just played with this great band, Hollis Brown, who opened for us on our last tour.
Oh, yeah.
They're really lovely guys and a fantastic band.
Right on track, right on track, baby, don't look back.
So when I saw it out there, I thought, this would be something, just a memento of our last tour in America, where we played a lot of concerts with Hollis Brown. They're a great band. Really recommend them. Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
The way she had the color of her hair. Her voice was soft and cool. Her eyes were clear and bright, but she's not there.
Amoeba.